Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Wisteria here, whether you're listening on the podcast or on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. This fairy tale is called How Bradamante Conquered the Wizard, and it traditionally can be found, I believe, in the Red Romance book. From childhood, Bradamante had loved play fighting with swords and bows and arrows, and her main joy was to mount the most fiery horses in her father's stable. So, as well as growing up beautiful, she became tall and strong. She liked to put on men's armour and take part in tournaments among the most valiant knights. In fact, it was rare that she failed to carry off the prize. Of course, so wise and beautiful, a maiden had no lack of wooers. But Bradamante wasn't interested in any of them, except the brave Sir Roger. But she kept her love secret and was content to wait till Roger thought fit to claim her as his bride. One day, Bradamante heard the news that Roger had disappeared and no one knew where. She didn't keep herself from weeping, for she did weep. She did not wail, though. The next morning, she sharpened her sword and fastened her helmet and rode off to seek him. She had wept all night, and Bradamante never wept. Through many adventures, she pushed on till she crossed a mountain and reached a valley, watered by a stream and shaded by trees. There, on the bank, lay a young man with his head buried in his hands and seemingly in the deepest misery he could be in. He told Bradamante that he had been out riding with a damsel whom he had lately freed from the power of a dragon. He had hoped to marry the lady, but as soon as they rode along, a winged horse, guided by a man in black, swooped down and snatched her away. Since that day, he explained, I have sought her through forests and over mountains. Oh, whenever I heard about the wizard's den or where it was to be found, I would go, but each time it was a false hope that lured me on. Now I am sure that my beloved is held captive among the rocky slopes nearby, but I am at a loss how to rescue her. Oh, if it is there she lies, I will free her, cried Bradamante. But the knight shook his head. I visited that dark and dreadful place, he said. It is like the valley of death, among black and pathless precipices stand a rock, and on its top is a castile, whose walls they are of steel, and on its top is a castle again Those walls on the castle are made of steel. Whoever built it made it so, and I do believe that it may be made by a magician, and none can capture it. I have watched 2 knights try and fail. One was Gradasso, king of Seracane, and the other, and the more valiant, was the noble young Sir Roger. Bradamante's heart leapt at the mention of Roger, but she only said, "What happened to them?" I told them my sad tale, and they answered in knightly fashion that they would fight for the freedom of my lady. The king tried to attack the castle first, but it was no use. In an instant, there shot into the sky the winged horse, bearing his master, clad as before in black armour. He darted down and thrust a spear into Gradasso's side. Roger, well, he wanted to help too, never thinking of what might befall himself. But I guess that's a knight's duty. In truth, though, I mean, how? How could mortal men fight with a wizard who had studied all the magic of the East and had a winged horse to help him? His movements were so swift that they couldn't see where to strike him, and soon both Gradasso and Roger were covered with wounds, while their enemy had never once been touched. Their strength as well as their courage began to fail against the strong magician and the strange warfare in front of them. Then the wizard drew a silken covering from off his shield and held the shield towards them like a mirror. It blazed so bright that I had to cover my eyes. When I opened them again, I was alone upon the mountain. Roger and Gradasso had, well, maybe been carried away by the wizard to the dark cells of the prison, where my fair lady also lies, answered the knight, and he again dropped his head upon his hands. Now, this knight was a wicked man, and he was called Count Pinabello. But Bradamante did not know that she shouldn't trust him. "Please, take me to the castle," she cried, thinking joyfully that her quest to find Roger was finally at an end. "I will lead you there, yes, of course I will, if you so desire to meet certain doom," answered the knight, with an evil glint in his eyes. So they set forth, but Pinabella did not head Bradamante towards the castle. Instead, he led her to the mouth of a dark, steep cavern, and there he pushed her down. Bradamante fell right to the bottom and lay there for quite some time, bruised and shaken. When she became used to the darkness, she stood up and looked around. " 'There may be some way out,' she thought, 'but I must try.' noting that the cave was less gloomy than she first had fancied, and felt around the walls. On one side there seemed to be a passage, and going cautiously down it, she found that it ended in a sort of church, with a lamp hanging over the altar. At this moment there opened a little gate, and through it came a lady. She was barefooted, with streaming hair. "Oh, Bradamante," she said, "I have waited a long time for you. Here lies the tomb of the great magician Merlin. Before he died, he prophesied that one day you would find your way here. He commanded to me to come here from a far distant land to help you." At that, a voice rose up from the tomb nearby, where Merlin had been buried for many hundreds of years. "It is foretold that you will be the wife of Roger," it boomed. "So take courage and follow the path that leads you to him. Let nothing turn you aside until you have overthrown the wizard who holds him captive." Then the voice ceased, and the lady explained that she was Melissa, a kind sorceress who went through the world seeking to set wrongs right. She showed Bradamante a book which foretold all the glories that Bradamante and Roger's children would achieve. "Tomorrow at dawn," she said, when she had half finished and put away the magic scroll, "I myself will lead you to the wizard's castle." The next morning, Melissa and Bradamante rode out from the cavern by a secret way. They passed over rushing rivers. They climbed high precipices. And as they went, Melissa taught Bradamante how to try to set Roger free. No man, however brave, could withstand the wizard, who has his magic mirror as well as his flying horse to aid him. If you would reach Roger, you must first get possession of a ring. This ring is owned by a man called Brunello. He is riding only a few miles in front of us. In the presence of this ring, all charms and sorcerers lose their power. But take heed, for to outwit Brunello is no easy task. It is good fortune indeed that Brunello should be so near," answered Bradamante joyfully. "But how shall I obtain his ring?" "You must fail to talking with him upon magic and enchantments," replied Melissa. "But beware, lest he guess who you are or what is your business. Lead him on till he offer himself to be your guide to the wizard's castle. As you go, strike him dead before he has time to spy into your heart, and above all, before he can slip the ring into his mouth. If he does that, you lose Roger forever." Having said all this, Melissa bade Bradamante farewell, and they parted with tears and promises of meeting again speedily. Bradamante entered an inn close by, where Brunello was already seated. She knew who he was straight away, But he knew her too. For many a time he had seen her at Joyce and other tournaments. However, they both pretended they did not know each other and fell into talk and discussed the castle and the knights which lay imprisoned inside. I have dared to try many perilous adventures, said Bradamante at length, and I've never failed. Not so far anyway. And I always trample my foes underfoot. If only I had a guide to take me to the castle, I myself would challenge this wizard to deadly combat. Brunello offered his own services, and together they climbed the mountain till they stood at the foot of the castle. Look at those walls of steel that crown this precipice, began Brunello. But before he could say more than a strong girdle, he had passed out because Bradamante had knocked him out. Before he could even finish his sentence, as it had to be done quick, swift, and without him knowing. Bradamante drew the ring off his finger and placed it on her own. Though kill him she would not. Then she seized a horn which hung scarcely around a cord, and blowing a loud blast, waited calmly for the magician to answer. For this was what is known as the war horn, to call out the wizard. Out the magician came upon his flying steed, along with his silken-covered mirror, uttering spells that he had laid on many a knight, many a lady. Bradamante heard them all, and was not any worse for the most evil of them. Furious at his defeat, the wizard snatched the cover from the shield, and Bradamante, knowing full well what was to follow, sank heavily on the ground. At this, the wizard covered his shield, and once more guided his steed swiftly to where the maiden lay. After that, unclasping a chain from his body, he bent down to find her. It was then that she lifted her ringed hand and saw that before her stood an old man with white hair and a face scarred with sorrow. "Kill me, I pray you, gentle lady," said the magician. "Yet know before I die that it is only because I love Roger that I have caused so much misery to so many gallant knights and fair damsels. I am Atlantis, the servant whose job is to watch over him in childhood and use my magical powers to keep him from harm. As Roger grew to manhood, he was always the bravest and best in deeds of chivalry. So reckless was he that many a time, and I say many a time, it took me so much magic to bring him back to life when seemingly he lay dead. At length, to keep him from harm, I built this castle and filled it with all that was beautiful, and as you know, with the knights and ladies to be his companions. When everything was ready, I captured Roger himself. Now, take my horse and shield, and throw open wide the castle doors. Do what you will, but leave me only Roger. The heart of Bradamante was not usually deaf to the sorrows of others, but this time it seemed turned to stone. Your horse and shield I have won for myself, she said, and haven't you learned that it is useless to war against fate? It is fate which has given into me to why I am here. Therefore, lead the way to the gate, and I will follow you. They climbed in silence the long flight of steps leading to the castle gate. Then Atlantis stooped and raised a stone on which was engraved strange and magic words and symbols. Beneath the stone was a row of pots filled with undying flames, and on these the wizard let the stone fall. In a moment there was a sound as if all the rocks on the earth were splitting. The castle vanished into thin air. It was gone, completely gone, along with Atlantis. Instead, a troop of knights and ladies stood before Bradamante, who she spotted though. She spotted only Roger. She had freed them all from the enchantment, but wasn't even interested in their thanks. She just wanted to get to Roger and save him, and so she did. And of course, as fate would have it, did they marry, did they not? That's not part of the story, I'm afraid. So I guess we'll never know, but let's just assume that they did. It is fate, after all. The end. Thank you for listening. Very different story indeed. Did like it, but different. Different wording as well, so I hope you understood. Anyway, please hit that like, share if you can, and if you've not yet subscribed, please consider doing so, because it really helps. Many blessings.